All right, all. This is a recap, and we're going to cover the Ottoman Empire and finish off the Gunpowder Empire today. I was going to use like a blast off pun, but I'm like, that's rockets. It's not guns. And I'm like, ugh, gun puns? Not fun. And those rhyme, and that's about as much fun as I'm comfortable with. Anyways, we'll do the Ottoman Empire today. We'll do the Safavids and the Mughals. And with those three covered, you're ready to present your presentations. And as if you're going to do anything else, present presentations. Nicely said, Mr. Hauger. Also, I'll get you ready for a quiz and an assessment on this unit. So, sweet. Let's run through. I'm going to go kind of quick, but as always, I'll put the video link from this session in so that you can watch it again and take notes later if that's something that you want to do. And I'll give you plenty of time in class to work on your assignment like I always do. Remember this guy with the giant marshmallow hat? That's kind of disrespectful. Suleiman's greatest accomplishment was creating a stable government for the Ottoman Empire. He was known as Suleiman the lawgiver because he created a law code that governed his people and guaranteed them some rights as well. He created a tax system to raise money for his empire because you can't fund anything without taxes, even though we hated it enough to revolution and revolt against the British. He granted freedom of worship to Christians and Jews, wisely showing religious tolerance at a time 500 years before a time meaning today, where we still argue about that. This is the Mosque of Suleiman by architect Sinan, one of the great works of art, and lots of artists use Suleiman as inspiration for art, poetry, and architecture. Under Suleiman, the Ottomans experienced a cultural golden age. And maybe he got a little arrogant trying to attack Vienna and try to do a little bit too much too soon, or celebrated before he was victorious, like Nick Young there. But the Roman Empire pwned them back, and that was the end in 1529. I'm going to give you more time today to game plan your posters and make sure you use your time effectively. Also want to let you know there is a test review that is posted. It's Hauger History episode 101, where I cover all these main notes again. If you want to hear it in a different form, in a 9-minute recap, you can do that, or you can rewatch this video later. Let's talk about the Safavid Empire, which some of the groups are discussing. Persia. I'm going to roll through this fairly quickly. The Safavids were Turks who lived in Persia. That's modern-day Iran. They built a powerful gunpowder army and created an empire in that modern-day region of Iran. They came up with some really amazing ways to blast hundreds of rockets at people all at once. 200 fuses in this instance. Lighting one big fuse is going to launch 200 rockets. Rocket-powered arrows. Those would do some damage. Yeah? Pretty rad. Unlike the Ottomans, who were Sunni Muslims, the rulers of the Safavids were Shia and strictly converted the people that they conquered. Shia Muslims thought only Muhammad's descendants could become caliphs and lead the Muslim people. The Sunni did not think the caliphs were necessary and thought they could select people. The Ottomans were Sunni, the Safavids, again, were Shia. Today, between 10% and 13% of the world's Muslims are Shia, and 87 to 90% estimated are Sunnis. Safavid rulers were called Shahs. That's the Persian word for king. And there's Sacramento Kings, just because your teacher is a basketball fan. The greatest ruler was Shah Abbas, who came to power in 1587. He borrowed ideas from outside groups to help improve his empire. Alexander the Great did that, the Greeks did that, the Romans did that. As you come across some good ideas and new cultures, take the best stuff, incorporate it, and make it your own. Cultural diffusion happened as they conquered more areas of Europe and Asia. Here's just a little bit of world cultural diffusion, like things like cattle, horses, pigs, wheat, and rye. Those things didn't grow in America. It's funny because we're the number one exporter of cows and beef, but we didn't have those things. As we traded with Europeans, we realized there were a lot of cool things we'd like to bring back. And sometimes trading goods meant trading people to harvest those goods, and sometimes trading meant stealing. And that's an unfortunate side effect. But cultures have spread ideas and goods and religions all over the world. Another thing that Abbas liked was the idea of janissaries. When you conquer people, you hire them or force them to work in your army or your government. You use a merit-based system, and you introduce some aspects of religious toleration so that all people can serve within your system. Yep, we still use merit-based systems today. These are some of the teacher tests you need to take, called CSETs, to become a teacher, to prove that you have the merit to teach. I did that. What a pain. And what a bunch of money that was. I think one test was $300. Luckily, I passed it the first time. Anyways, art flourished, especially carpets that blended Persian and European designs. These became luxury items, and still are. Very expensive. Some of these are between $1,000 and $2,000. Here's a few more. Pretty cool, hand woven. Some of them have dozens of knots along the side, all hand strung. Takes months to make, or weeks, depending on how skilled you are and how quick you're moving. The decline of the Safavids, like the Ottomans, was a problem of control. Shah Abbas actually blinded or killed his most capable sons to make sure he kept power for himself and that nobody backstabbed him. That makes family reunions rough. As a result, weak leaders led to a rapid decline of the empire. To maintain power against rivals, Suleiman and other Ottoman sultans executed or jailed anyone who might usurp the throne, but that led to weakness in the governing power, plus a distrust for the people in power. While the Ottomans lasted until 1922, which is really amazing, you're talking about 400, 500 year span all the way to World War I and afterwards, the Safavids fell in 1747. Did not last as long. But they did change the terrain of the region quite a bit, as well as the culture. By the outbreak of World War I, the Ottoman Empire was so weak it was known as the sick man of Europe and would end in 1922. So that's it for the Safavids. I'm going to talk about the Mughals, but once again, plugging the review podcast. And remember, you can come back and play this again. You can slow it down. What I'm trying to do today is just give you as much time as possible during our class hour to get work done. That's what I'm about. So you should have everything you need, but make sure you are preparing to get that group work done. And I'm going to go ahead and walk through the Mughal Empire, and we'll do the gallery walk of your posters very soon as they're finished. The Mughals were Muslims who descended from Turks. We're talking about the region of India now. Oh, like the Ottomans and the Safavids, the Mughals built a powerful army on guns and cannons. Hey, I wonder if it's because we're talking about Gunpowder Empires. Yeah, I have bongos near me. All right, so that would be pretty crazy, scary to see. An elephant armed with a bunch of riflemen on top. In 1494, Babur became king of the Mughals, expanded the army, and created his empire. He became king and expanded the territory greatly. He was the greatest of all the Mughal rulers. His greatest achievements was blending culture. Again, cultural diffusion, bringing in different aspects to make everybody richer for the experience and taking good ideas from many different ideas. He was also religiously tolerant and held religious discussions with Hindu and Muslim scholars to bring in the best ideas of how to maintain order in his empire. He ended the tax that non-Muslims were required to pay, creating a fair and affordable tax system, talking about Akbar now. Because he was Muslim ruling in Hindu region, Akbar also allowed non-Muslims to worship their religion freely. He had many wives, including Muslims, Hindus, and Christians. Wow, talk about cultural diffusion. The best example of Akbar's tolerance was his creation of the religion called the Divine Faith, an example of syncretism because it blended ideas from Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism. Today you might call that like Unitarianism, except more limited form. I have a few friends who are Unitarian, and so they read from all sacred books and will even read poetry when they go and meet up at a church-like service. Akbar hoped the divine faith would end conflicts between Muslims and Hindus. It never really attracted a lot of converts, and when he died, so did the faith. But it was an idea showing that 400 years ago, you're being open to people doing what they believe and practicing those beliefs freely without being forced to convert. During his reign, Indian art began to flourish as well, and architecture was known for blending Hindu and Islamic designs, so you get a lot of really cool buildings. The greatest example is the Taj Mahal, built in 1631, which is one of the wonders of the world. The Mughal Empire grew weak by the 1700 mark, and as rulers spent too much money on palaces and war, it brought famine and starvation to the poor. Another example of people on the bottom suffering and people on top having a great time and building exceptionally large palaces. Also, the large population of Hindus began to revolt against their Muslim rulers. Oh boy, religious conflict and strife. Great Britain took advantage of the weakness, conquered India, removed the people from power, and had about 100 years where India was under the control of Great Britain. Conclusions, guys, we made it. And I did that efficiently. That's bringing points to timeliness and then trying to improv how great that was. Anyways, Ottoman, Safavids, and Mughals built their large Islamic empires using gunpowder militaries. Their decline by the 1800s allowed newly industrialized nations, which we'll cover in about a few weeks. We'll cover industrialization. And that's all we wanted to get to. Cool. Any questions? Put them in the chat box. Let's talk about the questions you have, and then let's get working and finishing our classwork. And let's do that now. Thanks a lot, guys. Good work.